Continental Conference of Colored Peoples, so-called colored people in the history of mankind.
In Bandung, representatives from the so-called Third World, including India, China, and Vietnam, stepped onto the international stage. They voiced their national interests and called on oppressed nations to reject colonial rule. In the wake of the Second World War, European powers were losing their overseas empires. The process, which had begun in Asia, was now spreading to Africa. New states were searching for their place in an international order dominated by the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. March 1957. Jubilation in the streets of Accra, the capital of the former British Gold Coast. The country had just declared its independence and was renamed Ghana.
Ghana, we now have freedom. Ghana, land of freedom. Toils of the brave and the sweat of their labors. Toils of the brave which have brought results.
It's not every day that a new name is written on the map. Ghana, first African colony to achieve full independence.
The central figure in the independence movement was Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, an economist and a committed anti-colonialist since his youth.
But this is an opportunity for the African to demonstrate to the world that the African, given the chance, can manage his own affairs. And with the experience we have had, I'm quite sure that we shall be able to live up to this opportunity.
The new president wanted to transform Ghana's economy through rapid modernization. But harsh reality soon dampened his optimism. For more than a century, hundreds of millions of Africans had lived under colonial rule. Britain, France, Belgium, the German Empire, Spain, Portugal, and others had exploited people and natural resources at the expense of indigenous cultures and social structures. In the 1950s, Ghana and many of the countries represented at Bandung lacked the financial resources needed for development. The promises of close cooperation made there were only partially fulfilled in the years that followed.
How are you guys?
Tired of the new tax laws keeping us up at night.
It's also confusing.
Well, that's why you're at Jackson Hewitt.
For the coffee?
You know it. But mostly to feel better about taxes.
Feeling better already.
And I can get you the senior deduction, up to $6,000.
Oh.
By contrast, both the United States and the Soviet Union commanded the economic and technical resources essential for modernization. Since 1945, the two superpowers had shaped a divided world with the Iron Curtain running through the heart of Europe. The United States promised individual freedom and prosperity. The Soviet Union offered social equality and central economic planning. The two rival systems competed on every front: economics, sports, culture, as well as nuclear and space technology. Demonstrating superiority to the rest of the world became a top priority. Given this Cold War rivalry, it seemed almost impossible for newly independent nations to remain neutral. Ghana's President Kwame Nkrumah, who had studied in the United States, initially turned to Washington. He sought American support for a major dam project on the Volta River to expand the country's power supply. For US President Dwight D. Eisenhower, the emerging nations of Africa were strategically important, not only as new markets and sources of raw materials, but also as key regions in the global Cold War.
21.
But these countries were also potential allies, with votes in international organizations. Under no circumstances should they all drift into Moscow's orbit. The dam project was approved. In the Kremlin, the first secretary of the Communist Party, Nikita Khrushchev, was also closely watching the developments in Africa. He viewed decolonization as one of the defining transformations of his time, a historic shift that demanded support. To pursue these goals, Khrushchev expanded departments dedicated to international relations. The Soviet intelligence services, the KGB and the GRU, were briefed on developments across Africa.
Scribe is how you stop explaining the same thing over and over at work. Watch this. It'll change your life. Raise your...
The race for influence in Africa had begun again. But this time, Africans refused to be passive observers of their own fate. To avoid a new form of domination, Nkrumah relied on competition. No sooner had he returned from Washington than he contacted Moscow, seeking support for another project, the construction of a hydroelectric power plant. Nkrumah was impressed by the Soviet model of development, built on central planning, collective organization, and the mobilization of the masses.